ladies and gentlemen. It's our Ukrainian talk show. My name is Sasha Star, and I will have today Mark Lee, producer of Pod TV, who will help me to have this program. Welcome to the show, Mark. Okay,
Yeah, I'm
hope
here.
you join
Glad to
us.
join you and everything. I
And,
know a lot of people were talking earlier. Hold on
oh,
one
okay.
second. About um Putin and everything else. Talking about Putin and along those lines. So a lot of people were talking about this idea of the AI talking to him and everything. But I'd love to hear your thoughts around this because apparently he did a rambling conference.
Hmm. Well, I think that shows us that because Putin is younger than both Biden and what's his name, Trump, he is still coherent most of the times. Sometimes he sleeps. Sometimes he, by his own admissions, he indicated how many people Russia lost by comparing different figures from his speech. You can easily establish that Russia lost 320,000 people. It's a sizable loss. And but he's still largely unchallenged. He's going for re-election in March of this year, and waiting until his friend Trump would would win the election in the United States next November. That's his only real hope. And in the meantime, the situation in Ukraine doesn't change a lot. It's still positional war. People are dying. I checked every day. For example, yesterday Russia lost another 1,080 people. You see, Russia, unlike Ukraine, they're trying to attack. They want to bring some kind of a present, maybe Christmas present or whatever it is, to Putin by taking some small village here and there. And when you attack in positional war, obviously you're losing away a lot of people, much more than when you defend. So, judging from this arithmetic, they will lose in next month another 30,000 people. It's a tenth of what they're already lost. It's a really incredible situation, but things are getting better and better from Ukraine from political point of view because European Union now approved 50 billion euros package for Ukraine, and it seems to me that in US things would be resolved in favor of Ukraine, if not before Christmas, will be after New Year, but I think it's definitely going to be in its favor. Mark, what's your opinion? Would that be a favorable decision on Ukraine?
Hold on. Definitely been following the war, and I definitely think that y'all are doing meaning Ukrainian, a valid and doing a very uh, valued job of defending your land. Your lands need to be defended. I definitely think that that is a positive notion and everything. I guess the thing that I'm concerned about, and I don't know your thoughts around this, is are they getting enough support from Europe? Because I know that there's been a push to try to get uh, Ukraine into the EU and into some of these other organizations. I know that you're not necessarily a big fan of the UN and everything, but they're trying to get them into these organizations. There are organizations and countries, even in Eastern Europe, that are not supporting it. And I don't understand all the geopolitics, even though I majored in poli sci when I was much younger and everything. But why is Hungary, and if you can explain that, I'm going to go ahead and end those other folks and everything. If you can explain to me why Hungary is so against Ukraine and why there is this pushback, because apparently Hungary is pushing back on some of the European aid, and they definitely are pushing back in the membership into the EU. It seems to me that they would be a logical ally, not a logical adversary. But I don't understand all the geopolitics the way you do. So if you can explain to our audience and to myself a little bit about why Hungary is so against Ukraine being part of the EU.
Mark, that's an easy one. The ruler of Hungary, very authoritarian man by the name Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban is a great ally of Putin. And you can see it in many pictures where he was taken with him, and in his rhetorics. He is obviously a very close friend of Mr. Putin. Now, that's a reason why, trying to be useful to Putin as much as he can, they are trying to block any initiative whether Ukraine would join the European Union or NATO or just anything. His stance is obviously against Ukraine all the way. Now, that's not going to stop European Union for pursuing its help to Ukraine. They can help Ukraine individually if needed, each country by country. Now, something else is very scary development. As much as you know that the strategy of Putin is to weaken the West generally and United States and Western Europe. Now, what is there happening is, by the way, there were several Hamas individuals arrested in Germany, Denmark, and I think
Netherlands, which actually surprised me because two of those countries are, in my mind, and just knowing what I do know about geopolitics, considered quote unquote neutral countries. Because I have know people from Denmark and Netherlands, and I know historically that a lot of that Nordic area is considered to be relatively neutral. So I was actually somewhat surprised, but then not overly surprised, because if you're going to go organize a terrorist attack, what better place to organize it than in a place that doesn't expect you to be there, which would be a neutral country, and all along those lines. So in some ways I was surprised, but in other ways I wasn't, because if I was going to organize something, I might want to go to some place that won't have as heavy a security because of its supposed neutral status. And we do know that even neutrality can be an interesting term, because sometimes the countries that are neutral aren't always neutral. They may have a leaning one way or the other. But yeah, when I noticed the three countries, two of those surprised me. Maybe they didn't surprise you, but they surprised me when I realized it was Denmark and Netherlands is where they found these folks at.
I hardly would call them neutral because they're part of NATO, they're part of European Union. What makes them neutral, according to you? I'm not so sure. Germany, uh, they just erected several new laws completely against Muslims, completely against, of course, all Palestinians or Hamas or whoever, because since they're Muslims, so obviously all these new laws are against them. Now, anybody who wants to enter, Germany has to sign a paper agreeing with the right of Israel to exist. And if you don't sign that paper, get out of Germany. Now, all the pro-Palestinians demonstrations, they are being subdued in a very harsh way. And apparently there is a new law is being prepared that whoever participated in anti-Israeli demonstrations will be kicked out of Germany, even if you're a citizen. Doesn't matter, out. That's the way to do it. So this is a part of overall anti-Western campaign. They're threatening to destroy all Jewish institutions, kill Jews in Western Europe, so on. So now this is going much farther than just a fight between Israel and Gaza. It's going now to the world scene. And I think that has to be subdued in a very, very harsh way. And all these members of this organization, terrorist organizations, they have to be killed. They have to be eliminated.
So, I mean, by that notion, because like I said on a couple of other shows, I have live near Duke, which is a prominent university, and there are some other prominent universities that are here as well, like the University of North Carolina. Wake Forest is just down the road, and a number of other ones. And as I have told Shaquille, and I think I've told you as well, I have seen protests and people that are on both sides of the political aisle. There is a very active young Republicans group here, just like there are some active other groups as well and everything. So I think that in my mind, college is supposed to be about discourse of ideas and all along those lines. And I think that there are probably some very strong anti-Semitic views by some of the university students as well as professors. But I've also heard some that are the opposite side of that spectrum, where they might be anti-Muslim or anti a number of other things. I've even heard some both pro and anti-Russian voices on the college campuses and all along those lines. So I guess my question to you, Sasha, is at what point, where do we draw the line in terms of what is allowed or not allowed in what is supposed to be an institution where kids are supposed to be having a chance to express their opinions, whether we agree with their opinions or not. So I don't know the answer to this, and I'm asking you as a person that I'm just talking to, and all along those lines, where would you draw the line as to what is allowed and not allowed? Because there is sometimes people that want to say things, and we don't always agree with what they say. I mean, there have been a number of things that have been said hateful about a number of groups that I don't agree with, and there have even been people that have come to speak on campuses that don't necessarily agree with their views and all along those lines. So I'm just wondering, where is the line drawn? Because you've also got, as I think people have mentioned on other shows, these walls of communications where people can write like and all in that space, and those are hard to regulate because I can go up on a midnight road and sometimes they're in like little cross sections and write whatever I feel like, and I don't know that you can even control those kind of writing. So I don't know where the line is in your mind.
Mark, I would like to take you to Germany around 1930. Germany at that time was the most advanced scientific, cultural country in the world. German German universities, such as Heidelberg, there were many others, they were 5 times more significant than the best English or American institutions, colleges, universities. And they were perceived as the institution where students are accumulating their knowledge, sciences, and many other subjects. Now, when the Nazis started to take over Germany, and of course, they were continuing to learn the sciences and all different subjects and so on, but their political views were getting skewed by the Hitler's ideology. And in just very few years, these institutions openly supported fascism and the genocide of Jews and so on.
No.
Now, where has the university in US? If the goal is to get students accumulate knowledge and expertise, then all this so-called pro-Palestinians, anti-Israelis, anti-Palestinians, all this has to be suppressed. But then I'm getting on the thin ice suggesting that there would be no longer freedom of speech.
Well, that's what I'm asking because, like I said, because one of the things that happens in a lot of places is that I can go up and down the East Coast, I can go to the West Coast, I can go to a number of universities, including my own alma mater, and I can tell you that there were people that spoke there that were part of neo-Nazi movements or the part of other kinds of movements, just like there were parts of people that spoke that were very much Black nationalists or some very radical forms of African American speech and all along those lines. So, and a lot of times they bring in these people so that the students can hear their viewpoint and even sometimes ask them questions as to why they have their belief systems. And sometimes they are brought in large public lectures because a lot of times the universities of the West bring in different people, including people that they don't necessarily agree with. I know that there's even some people that have come in, I know it's a separate issue, that have spoken very heavily in favor of reparations for African Americans as well as past reparations that went like for the Japanese and other people. So I guess my question is, in your mindset, should we not have that kind of dialect on universities at all, or because that's the argument around free speech, is that they want people to come in, even people that we don't agree with, to share their viewpoint, the reasons that they have their viewpoints, and along those lines. I imagine, and it's just me imagining, that if this was 1940, and I could be wrong, but if this was the 1940, 1930s, or whatever time, around that time that Hitler was around, there literally would be campuses that would invite Mr. Hitler to come and speak. And there might have even been campuses that invited him to come and speak in the middle of that war and everything. So I guess what I'm asking is that something that should have happened? I imagine there were people that would have invited Mussolini to speak, but I don't know that for a fact. But I imagine that there probably would have been people that would have invited them to come to speak. Now, they probably would have not got the warmest welcome in the world, and the people that were there probably would have given them a very hard time and all along those lines, but they might have been invited because of that whole notion of freedom of speech that you just alluded to and everything. So I'm trying to figure out whether that is something that you think should be tossed the way that a certain founder of the network thinks that we should get rid of the ability to have guns, because I know a certain founder of the network has talked about the amendment that is the gun amendment. So are you thinking that the free speech amendment ought to go away as well? And I don't know your answer.
If you look at many previous programs on this network, I was always of the opinion that freedom of speech, if you really look at it carefully, it's a fiction. There is no such thing as freedom of speech. Freedom of speech supposed to have your ability to write a check for $25,000 as the deposit to your lawyer's trust account. So he will protect you. Either somebody will attack you for whatever you said, or you said and you want to attack somebody for whatever he said or she said, and get some action. Therefore, your freedom of speech is as good as nobody will sue you. And for example, by the way, in Toronto, there is a very interesting thing happened. There are a lot of anti-Semitic demonstrations in Toronto, people who are claiming the Palestinians' right and anti-Israeli agenda and all that stuff. So this is all anti-Semitic agenda. And somebody said that the last thing what anti-Semites like is when there is a damage to their pocketbook. So the decision was there's a very strong and large group of lawyers in Toronto who are taking all cases where there was anti-Semitism claimed. And they are suing individually, say for $250,000, for $1 million. This is not large amounts of money, but substantial enough for if you're a student and you have a judgment, even for $250,000, it's not going to help you a lot, right? So your pocketbook will be damaged quite heavily. And you know what? There's much less anti-Semitic actions in Toronto. There were just Hanukkah ended, and there were a lot of Israelis demonstrations, and there was nothing instance.
Yeah, but that same feeling, and I mentioned to you her earlier and everything, and like I said, I did invite her to come on World Edition. I've also invited her to come on some other shows as well. But Nadine Beer is a activist, a social movement activist, a labor activist. Some people would say is where she falls in because she does a lot of work around the Latino communities, farm workers, and labor rights, and all in that space. And she's been doing it for the last 21 years and all in that space. As a matter of fact, I think some friends of hers were actually killed in a Islamophobic attack, and it's definitely what people even said it was before October 7th. I think it was last year that were at the University of North Carolina and all in that space and everything. So I guess what I'm asking you, and I don't know your answer, is just like there are some people that would think that everybody that is Israeli isn't necessarily pro Netanyahu or pro the far right kind of side of Israel and all along those lines. I don't think that everybody that is Palestinian is necessarily a terrorist, but there are some people that would argue that all Palestinians by birth and by nature are terrorist. And like I said, I did invite her to come on the new show. We'll see if she shows up or if she shows up on one of my shows and everything. But I've known this lady for a while and everything along those lines. As a matter of fact, she just did a rally to end violence in Gaza on World Children's Day, which was last month, and all in that space, or at least she was one of the people that was organizing that and all along those lines. But I was just wondering your thoughts. Is everybody from Palestine necessarily a Palestinian terrorist? And like I said, she's even been a fellow in certain organizations and all in that kind of space. But there's some people that would
Uh,
automatically assume that she is part of that because she is from that area of the world.
Mark, you know that not all Germans supported Hitler during Second World War. There were a
Right.
lot of people who didn't support Hitler, and they hated Hitler.
Mhm.
But when Dresden was bombed and 200,000 people were killed, when a Russian army raped 2 million German women when they invaded Germany in around February 1945, in just 3 months, it didn't matter whether these women, some of them Hitler, some of them not. Some of them were enemies of Hitler, but it didn't matter. That's what we call a collateral damage.
I've
That's
heard
the
you talk
word
about
for
collateral damage. Yeah, I've heard you talk
yeah.
about collateral damage before and everything. But I guess what I'm saying is
Mark,
by
never
that
mind
same logic. But
yeah.
by that same logic, should we have not put the Japanese in concentration camps? Because we did jail a bunch of Japanese during World War II, and a lot of those Japanese weren't necessarily part of the Japanese military and everything, but we were feeling threatened by them. And even during the pandemic, we saw a number of people that were concerned about where the virus was coming from, and they wanted to do similar stuff, even though we didn't do it this time around to the Chinese American population and everything. So I guess at what point, Sasha, do you draw the line, to borrow one of our other panelists' discussion? Like, do we just assume that everybody that's part of those groups is part of the bigger problem? Because and not everybody that is, I use the analogy of ANC. Not everybody in South Africa was a supporter of ANC. That was the more radical wing of South African protests and everything. So where do we draw the line?
Mark, that's an easy one. Refer to my just recent show where I was talking about real politics. In a case of war, there is the truth is that the winner dictates to the losing side, to side who lost the war, especially in case of complete capitulation. This is far the best outcome of any war, where one side completely capitulates to the other side, because based on that, you can create a long-lasting peace. That's exactly what's happened between the United States and Germany, United States and Japan, who were completely devastated and capitulated during Second World War. So if one side, like for example, in a situation where actually it's unheard of, where a weaker side, by far a weaker side, smaller side, like Gaza, attacked way much stronger and bigger state of Israel. So they exposed themselves to complete annihilation by a stronger side. And that's what we see happening right now. So
Well,
Palestinians, whether they wanted or not, same as German women who were raped during Second World War, they are completely uh, unfortunately, collateral damage. All they can do now, if I were Palestinian today, and if it's what's happened, I would raise my hands, I would get on my knees and ask Israelis to have mercy on me. That's all what they can do. They don't have any rights. You see, you're trying to appeal that there is international laws or something like this. They don't have anything on their side.
no,
They
but
allow Hamas to rule for last 18 years. Now they are their payback time. Unfortunately, well,
no, but that,
hold on. I know you're saying that of course they're scared of Hamas, therefore they didn't do anything about it. So they have to be scared of Israelis just as well and choose the lesser of evil. There's evil to be against Hamas, but there is also evil to be against Israelis. So they have to pick up the lesser of evils. That's all.
No, but by that same logic, the John Brown revolts never would have happened in all along those lines because that was actually somebody that was feeling that he wanted to go against a stronger power because he definitely the farm class, the ruling class of America at that time was who was in charge. And yes, whether it was him or Harriet Tubman or a number of others, they sacrificed themselves in order to get the greater freedom that we have here in this particular population and everything. So I would argue that sometimes the greater good causes you to go into what some people may say might be a losing battle, but you are willing to make that sacrifice and all along those lines. So that's what I would argue in your point. But Adam had a question, and we're going to come back to Russia in this, but Adam Lambarella was saying that NATO is to blame. You can't keep expanding eastward up to the Russian border. And we know that he's a friend of Mr. Putin. And he also added that our top priority should be reestablishing a strong relationship with Russia. Our foreign policy has resulted in too many terrible choices. And I would agree with him on that because sometimes we even aid the folks that we say are our enemies, because I think about even like Noriega and a number of other folks that we literally trained them and then they went and turned their forces against us after we trained them and everything. So sometimes it's to your point of collateral damage. Sometimes we choose what we consider the weaker of the two evils, and therefore we have trained some folks that have literally turned their back on, is my understanding, and I could be wrong, that some of those people that attacked on 9/11 way back in 2001 were actually trained by the United States military, and there have been other cases as well. So sometimes we are thinking that we are doing something that might be beneficial and it can turn back on us. But I don't know if you have any questions or responses to Adam and everything, but that's something that I've seen where we have trained folks and then they have turned against us.
Okay, I would go suggesting that Russia seeing in the last couple of years complete incompetence of NATO, United States, demonstrating weakness, unpreparedness to any continental war, which is now between Russia and Ukraine. Putin has lamented recently, just 3-4 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I don't remember. He was lamenting that if he would know how weak and incompetent NATO and United States are, and how strong Ukraine is, the only country in the world that can sustain a fight against Russian army, he would never attack Ukraine. He would go into Baltic republics, total population less than 5 million people, and call on the bluff of United States NATO about Article 5. Prove it. Show it to me. Where is your Article 5?
Well, really quickly, Adam added some other things. He said Putin is not some evil dictator. He is an autocrat, and he has to be given the dynamics in Russia. And he did agree with you on this time. I know y'all don't always agree, but he did say Sasha is 100% right. So he did agree with you on at least that part, maybe the Article 5. But I know that sometimes y'all disagree, and you think that Putin is the worst thing since sliced bread. And by the way, I do agree with you on that. But sometimes Adam gives you some pushback on that and all along those lines. But definitely he is saying that in that case, you were 100% correct.
Well, number one, I don't care about any pushback from anybody. Number two, Adam is right in respect that only dictator can rule a country like Russia, with 80% of population don't give a damn what will happen to them in the near future or in the far future or anywhere at all. They don't care. So this is only take dictator to rule such a biomass of people, because properly elected, the ruler of the country, whether the prime minister or president, with a normal population where they have certain rights and they are allowed to any meaningful discussion, then nobody would be able to rule such a country as Russia. So right now, basically, for the last 80 years, 75 to be exact, all world, including United States, were living under the fear of Russia starting nuclear attack. At that time, it was Soviet Union.
Right.
It was a bluff because during the Cuban crisis, where United States had about 100 warheads, nuclear warheads, Russia had only two, and yet they were able to uh, have a diplomatic match with Kennedy and have some threats and this that. And now, in 1991, when Soviet Union ceased to exist, US had great opportunity to end this nuclear terror by eliminating Russia's nuclear weapons. They failed to do that because they thought that, oh, they're so weak now that we don't care, or so on. So they started expansion of NATO. Now remember, you cannot expand NATO without a country prospective member of NATO. It has to accent to the, first of all, complete an application. Then it will be admission process. Then they need agreement of all existing. So it's a long process and it's not 100%. Look at Sweden. They applied for membership together with Finland. Finland
Right.
is now a member of NATO a long time ago. Sweden is not.
Yeah,
Hasn't
Sweden is still trying to get in and everything. Just really quickly, Sasha, because I've got to get ready to get off camera for a second. But one of the things that came, but I mean, we can still, I'm still gonna let you continue the conversation, but I'm just getting off camera
well,
for
we
a
are
second.
about to.
But
We are about
just really quickly, one of the things I was curious about is a lot of people thought that the war was going to be short. I did not think the war was going to be short, but they thought it was going to be a short war, and is now going on into another year. We're going to go into 2024, and now there's about to be some Ukrainian aid coming, hopefully from the Senate. So I just wondering, do you think that this aid is coming into your home country, and also do you think there's going to be enough aid to end the war sooner, or are we looking at the war going into 2025, 2026? So this is my question for you in terms of Ukraine and Russia. Where do you think we are, and how close are we to coming to a end to this war, and all along those lines? So just wondering your thoughts around that and all in that space. And we did have one other comment from Adam as well. He's saying Putin is a very intelligent and a nationalist. The West assured him years ago that NATO would not expand eastward. This proved wrong, and it provoked Putin, is what he is claiming, and everything. And the United States foreign policy toward Russia has been a disgrace, according to Adam as well. But I just wanted your take as to where we are with this war, and whether we should be thinking of another long haul of another 3 years, or whether it will be ending shortly. Because I know every show you and usually Ivan give each other the notion that hopefully the war will end and that there will be better news coming. And I agree with you. I hope that there is better news coming sooner versus later. But it has been going on for a while. So I just wondered where you are in terms of thinking the war will end. And then, like I said, I'm gonna bounce off camera, but I'll hear your answers while I'm getting ready to go to my next stop.
Okay, number one, Adam is right. The policy, U.S. Policy toward Russia was wrong. By 1991, Russia, Soviet Union at the time, was dissolved, and by 1992, United States had to extract all the nuclear weapons from Russia. So therefore, the policy of United States against Russia was flawed as early of 1992. United States had never allowed Russia to regain its strength. That had to be absolutely eliminated. Any attempts of Russia to regain its former power had to be immediately prosecuted and exterminated. Number two, today United States is paralyzed by this fight between Democrats and Republicans, and it looks like it's a real fight. It's not a show of some kind. It's a real fight, and there will be impeachment against Biden, and there were two impeachment against Trump, and they are ready actually physically to kill each other, and hopefully they will. It would be the best outcome of it all. So they will exterminate each other. That would be wonderful. And what else? We're talking about the Ukraine definitely will sustain itself through. Putin admitted that the real end of the war will be in 2026. Why he's saying 2026? He thinks that Trump will win the election. So in 2025, they will stop any meaningful help to Ukraine or altogether. And so Ukraine will not be able to continue to fight Russia. Also, Trump will dissolve NATO, or at least will take US out of NATO. So NATO will have a difficult time to continue to support Ukraine, and so without support from NATO and United States, Ukraine will fight maximum for yet another year until it will collapse. No peace with Putin is possible because it will give him just something to consolidate and attack Ukraine in next few months again. Furthermore, nobody can guarantee that it's not going to happen. Who is going to provide this guarantee? NATO? Putin doesn't care about NATO. Who? United States? Nobody in the world cares about United States anymore already. And especially if Russia will be successful with BRICS country to create its super gold-backed currency, then US dollar could be suffering. It will take 5, maybe 10 years, but it's on its way. So this is why situation is far more complicated than people think, that even if this tranche of help from the US, 50 or 60 billion dollars will be approved, don't for, don't you understand that this money are not leaving the United States? Maybe 10%, 90% are staying in the United States, providing jobs on US weapon manufacturers, highly paid jobs. And most of these manufacturers are in red states, in Republican states, 19 of them. They have this the complexes to produce more and more weapons. So that leaves us neither here nor there, but we'll see how it will develop in the next few days. And in the meantime, have a great weekend.
No,
And
yeah, definitely. Just really quickly, and I say you're wrapping up, but Adam said that you should be advising our current president. I do know that some of my friends on the left would actually argue what you just said, which is that it is playing into what some people consider the military industrial complex, which we know the United States is very much, because that is part of what builds our prisons, builds a number of other businesses as well. So there are some folks that give a pushback to that are a little bit more on the liberal to left side and all along those lines. I'm not saying that they are right or wrong, but they do give a pushback because they feel that we give too much money to the military and not enough money to the causes that need to be fixed and everything along those lines. But that is their opinion and not necessarily always mine. But hey, this has been fun talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you on another show I get to say in the background, which I usually do, but definitely have enjoyed it. And I do agree, hey, you have some good advice sometimes, and we don't always agree, Sasha, but I could see you advising either Biden or Trump, because you do have some very pertinent points that I can hear where you're coming from. And like I said, there are things that we agree on, there are things that we disagree on, but hey, that's what friends do. They don't always agree with each other, but I think that we both agree on something, and I think that even Jatovia said that, as well as some of our other friends and people on this network, which is that we are all looking forward to the day that Ukraine wins their victory, and that we can go back to seeing Ukraine being built to the greatness and the beauty that it once had. Because when I looked at those pictures of Ukraine before this war, it was a very beautiful country, and a country that I would love to visit one day. Because as I told you before, I haven't done enough world traveling, but I would love to visit that country, because it does look like it was a very beautiful country, and I'm sure that it will be rebuilt back to its original grandeur and all along those lines. So maybe one day you can even take me there and all along those lines. But I would love to have a visit with you and everything to your
Mark,
home country.
as we discussed the problems on U.S. University campuses and all these issues. I wish Trump, once he will be re-elected president, he will be able to resurrect a great institution by the name Trump University, so people will be able to get their knowledge and wisdom from the best minds of the United States. Thank you very much for that, and see you next week.
See you next
Bye-bye.
week. Bye.